Did Liberty University mishandle Title IX sexual assault allegations? The former spokesman of Liberty University says it did, and he joins me today on a special edition of The Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys. And joining me today is Scott Lamb, the former vice president of communications at Liberty University. He's also the plaintiff in a federal lawsuit. That lawsuit accuses Liberty of firing Lamb in retaliation after he objected to the school's handling or mishandling of sexual assault cases. And Scott joins me now again on a special edition of the Roys Report. So Scott, I know this has been a crazy week and you've been talking to a lot of media, but I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with me. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. After all, you and I know, even if the world doesn't know, that we have had lots of communications about these very things, specifically to the Title IX for all of 2021. And so I can't think of anybody better to be on the podcast with, and to you, who is really, no flattery intended, but literally has pushed the truth into the executive suite of Liberty University. And so I just like to say publicly, I'm thankful for that.
Oh, well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And let me just say, I mean, you're in a really difficult position right now because you're not popular with either side, I think, of this Title IX allegations and this controversy. You have Liberty that obviously is upset with you because you filed a lawsuit. You're calling them out. You have the Jane Does in that lawsuit saying, hey, you were on the enemy's side for a long time. Why didn't you come to our rescue a long time ago? I'm just going to let you up front address that. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't know the Jane Does personally, except for the one that I know through you, who I've met personally through you. And so what I like to say to that is that I'm going to have to let my actions toward them speak louder than words, or not really toward them, but really toward their legal counsel. To be honest, I don't even know how many of them are actually part of the lawsuit and part of, under legal counsel with Jack Larkin. To those who are, I would just say I'm in kind of consultation with Jack Larkin. I'll be giving him things that I know, telling him things that I know. I'd be willing to go and testify in a court of law if it goes to that. So I'm going to have to let my actions speak louder than words. I know that I have a lot to offer them that can be beneficial to them, not just legally, but hopefully. Look, when an institution isn't acting right, as I'm feeling this myself, you start to think to yourself, am I crazy? Is it just me, or are they really acting this way? And you wake up every morning thinking, maybe I'm just making something of this. And I don't know if they feel that way, but I know I feel that way sometimes over last year. I think that I can bring from the insider perspective that no, if you ever felt there was stonewalling, I can validate that from the inside. Now, the institution, of course, is not going to be a fan of mine. I should say this: the institution, the leadership of the institution, some of the executive leadership of the institution, some of the board of trustee members, some of the executive committee members. I'd like to state once again that I am the best friend that Liberty University has right now. I am pushing this forward because I am a friend of Liberty University for what it could be, not what it is with this situation, not what it has been over the last year to 20 years. I'm the best friend that they have. So to the institution, and to the alumni, to those who remember the dream that was Liberty University at its best, I'm the best friend that Liberty has right now. And I invite others to join in. To those who are victims of sexual assault and that have either joined the lawsuit, or perhaps they haven't joined the lawsuit, but they still are victims and they're out there. I cannot apologize on behalf of the institution. I'm not in the institution anymore. I longed to have apologized. I longed to have had the executive leadership say, hey, here's a strategy. Tell our insurance company to just go park it. Okay. We've got the funds. We can take care of this. Insurance company, go park it. Executive council, we're not dismissing you, but, we're not going to follow your counsel. We've got some explaining to do here. We've got some forthrightness to do here. We've got some repentance on this particular issue. Now, my lawsuit goes into more than just Title IX issues. But on that issue alone, some of the other things, there's maybe not necessarily a victim. There's shameful things done, there's unethical things done, but there isn't a clear victim. And that's where this whole issue became so burning in my heart, because there actually are people with a narrative of pain And to the extent that I could not possibly, it did not seem like I could move the institution towards what I thought was a Rachel Denhollander actually getting transparent here, which I thought we were going to be doing. And then I found out we weren't. Then the pain grew into me. I got one daughter, 5 sons. Either way, whether a son or daughter gets sexually assaulted, but I picture that as my daughter, happening to my daughter. There's nothing I would do other than just try to get this moved forward. And if something like that ever happened to my daughter, and I on behalf of the fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers that have daughters, and on behalf of the daughters themselves who had these things happen to them, the easiest way to become a millionaire is to become a vice president at Liberty University and stay there for 20 years. You don't have to stay there for 20 years, to be honest, but I'm 47, could have retired a multimillionaire with the salary and benefits and package and the tuition. I mean, it's amazing how much money you can accumulate probably if you don't have to pay tuition for your kids and you get paid a nice salary. I was only there since 2018. I have not, before that, I was a bivocational pastor. As recently as 2008, I made $30,000 a year. I cleaned up Section 8 property for a landlord in St. Louis, $10 cash on the barrel to put food on the table for my family. I don't come from anything, and I'll go back to nothing in terms of money, but you got to do what's right. The easiest way to enrich yourself is to not get fired from a vice presidency of Liberty University. Now, Liberty University will say that I was fired with cause, job performance. I can't wait to go to court on that one.
Let me talk to you about that. Yeah, because in your lawsuit, you talk about this October 4th meeting. You say that meeting became heated, and it was because you were raising issues about the Title IX allegations about the misconduct. They say, and let me just read their Liberty's response. They say, "We would like to make it clear that Lamb's advice on how to publicly respond to the Jane Doe Title IX lawsuit played no role in his termination. His termination was the result of a meeting about a recent review of the area under his management." So, Scott, I want to know what happened in that October 4th meeting.
A half truth is still alive. When you get called into a meeting and there's a reason why it's called, and then there's the real reason why it's called. And so the point is there was two issues that were brought forth. Both of those issues, actually, I have documentary evidence to show that, guys, those aren't actually issues. The president himself is who I report to, not this internal auditing committee. And so the internal audit was bringing some issues of concern about some memes that the Stand for Freedom Center had put out. Maybe these are getting close to violating 501c3 law. Okay, the only problem is the president, as it came out in Politico yesterday, the president, in a recorded phone call I had from July, and Liberty is spinning this one as well, saying, "Oh, he didn't mean that, nothing by." Look, I'm the senior vice president in charge of the Standing for Freedom Center. He's the president. When the president calls me and has a conversation, the purpose of which is to talk about the past, present, and future of the Standing for Freedom Center. What kind of value has it had, is it having, and will it have? And when he makes it clear that the value is found in getting the, quote, the right people elected, well, sir, we don't really do that. We're a 501c3, not a 501c4. And he goes, "Hey, look, there's ways. Right. I know there's things you can do as 501c3 to influence elections. I get that. We think we're already doing a lot of those. But he literally was talking about going out, knocking on doors, and those kinds of things.
Did that come up at the October 4th meeting?
That's where it got contentious, because he's taking the audit. These young guys who did the audit, looked at all of our media, social media, and had some room for that. Hey, here's some concern. You might want to get a little bit away from the line of crossing the 501c3. Or there was a few that they thought actually did cross the 501c3. All right, fine. We can dicker about that kind of stuff. But I said, well, the problem, the elephant in the room here is that you guys think that we've done bad 501c3 things, violations. But the president himself, as recently as July, told me that the main thing is to become, for Liberty University, the center needs to become what does Ralph Reed do, guys? He gets people elected as a 501c4, right? He's a Christian guy who knows how to get people elected, and he's really good at it. He said the center needs to be known throughout the nation for actually delivering on what Ralph Reed promises, but sometimes doesn't deliver on. And what does that mean, Julie? Now, you back it up even further. After the GOP primary here in Virginia, he told me, now he denies it, and this is when he started calling me a liar in the meeting. He told me with a smile on his face, but in the office of the president, okay, to his senior vice president, well, the value of the center to me is going to be found in November. I mean, like here in Virginia, we've got a gubernatorial election. You know what I'm saying? Well, does he mean what? What does he mean by that? Yeah, well, I mean, how does the value of the center have anything to do with the gubernatorial election in Virginia? Last August, when he got in here, he took me aside. I didn't know him hardly at all, didn't know his personality, but you listen really well to your boss. That's part of, being able to hold down a job, is trying to figure out how your boss communicates. He, again, with a smile, said it on his face, but he goes, I don't know much about the center, but I do know that there's an election in November, speaking of Biden versus Trump. And he goes, I guess we'll try to figure out the value of the center to the university. It depends on who wins that election, again, with a smile. But when you're in the office of the president, you don't just assume that everything is a joke. People can say things with a smile and actually mean it. Well, the problem is we don't do campaigns and elections. And he never told me, to go out and actively violate 501c4. He just told me that the value of the center is found in getting the right people elected, and fill in the blanks as to what he wanted me to do. I'm not sure.
So did you discuss the Title IX mishandling as well? Tell me about that.
The thing is, I've been discussing that all spring, like this 501c3 dance, small potatoes. I mean, that just keeps on pushing back against that kind of idea. And hey, we're doing a good job over here. But the Title IX is where it all gets, because you and I had all that experience in the spring with Jane Doe Kathy and getting her documents and why was that such a hassle? And I went into a lengthy discussion with that here on our local ABC affiliate, but it was painful for me. I'm not saying that as a victim. I'm just saying in a situation within the institution, I'm just a comms guy. If I don't know the facts, I can't communicate about something, or I can't know, well, this is something we can't communicate about yet, or I don't know. I've got to get the facts. And to even get those documents to the Jane Doe took 2 meetings and then a 3rd meeting to get them to her. And
this was her own personnel file. This was a woman who said that she was gang raped in 2005. She's just trying to get her own personnel file from Liberty, which, implicated the university in knowing about the crime and everything. And you're saying they didn't want to release it.
What I'm saying is we did release something to her, but I do not believe, humanly speaking, that she would even know about that other pile of documents if it wasn't for me having called the meeting and found out that there's other documents she doesn't have. I don't have a recording of that meeting. I have a recording of the 2nd meeting, but I came to an awareness that she didn't have all the documents. And I said, wait, so she doesn't even have these? Is she entitled to these? Yeah, but she hasn't asked for them. I'm like, this is going back to 2005. And this lady has been at our doorstep, apparently. The only reason why she's at my doorstep is because I'm the media and Julie Royce has showed up. See, that's where I'm saying I wouldn't have even known about her had it not been her working with you or you working with her. And so that actually was the catalyst for me actually having my eyes open to the idea. Look, I was under no thought that there hasn't been sexual assault. And I look at the records and it looks like, well, we've had some and things. I worked under the assumption that the Clary records were completely accurate, and maybe they have been in a legalistic sort of way. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have Clary Act, expertise here. I'm not accusing the university of fudging the Clary records. I'm actually not. What I'm saying is the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. You and I were involved in a conversation with the general counsel. It was off the record. I was in his office sitting right next to him. And, I just amazed at the dance that we were going through to basically say that she was not raped on campus, which technically, as you know from that conversation, was true, because at that time, right off the tunnel on which she was grabbed, so she was grabbed, and that was a crime, but the rape happened off, into the wooded area.
Okay, let me just give some background, because we're getting into again this 2005 gang rape that was reported, yet Liberty says was never reported. In fact, I don't think they've ever admitted that it was reported to them. I reported this story in June. This victim came to me. Actually, she came to me months before, and it took months and months to research this story. But Liberty was actually fined by Clary, by the Department of Education for not reporting this properly. So there was some violations there, but they'll never admit, or at least haven't admitted to this point, that she was actually gang raped. And like you said, not admitting it happened on campus. You were my point person for that story, and you helped coordinate some things. I can't speak to any off the record conversations I had. You can say from your perspective, what happened behind the scenes, because you're at liberty to do that, but I'm not. So I'm just curious, behind the scenes, what was the attitude towards this woman who now, more than 15 years after the fact, is raising, I still never have even been acknowledged by the university that I was raped. No kind of, they even provided counseling to her. She says, under false pretenses, she thought she was going to a professional counselor. She's ending up going to the wife of a VP, at Liberty University. I mean, none of this has ever been acknowledged by the school or done anything. I'm bringing this case to you with all sorts of documentation. What is the attitude of the school to this victim who, again, 15 years later, still traumatized?
Okay, so you're an undercover drug dealer and you're really trying not to let it be known that you're actually a police officer. So somebody's got a suspicion that maybe you are, all right, that maybe you're not fully with them. And other people are, they're kind of naive. So, with them, you get a lot of juice, and others, you don't get as much juice. I'm walking around. I didn't consider myself a mole or undercover police officer, but I'm going into rooms. Some people are more naive than others. And when I'm asking questions, some people were more, just naturally by God's, how the God made them, just more or whatever, maybe sin, but more guarded, immediately. With them, I got nothing, but with others, there's a more transparency. I will say that my colleagues, in meetings like that, they never spoke about those things except with an empathy of, these things were terrible. I mean, these things that happened. So I never heard anybody say, we don't believe these things to be true, what's being said. Now, however, there's always more to the story that we were in the meetings with. And so can I have that information? Okay. Well, you say you believe that something happened, right? But then there's more factual information. Can I have that? And that's where the hostility came in some of these meetings, where the antagonism came in. Like, what do you need to know that for?
But are you saying David Corey, Jerry Prevo, they believed the victims? They believed this happened?
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Acting President Prevo is not in these meetings. All right. Perhaps Jerry Prevo Jr. might have been in some of these meetings, but Acting President Prevo is doing something different in his leadership style. So he was not present in those meetings. I addressed to him about the Title IX issue one-on-one as it related to the Baker Tilly investigation. That, sir, I don't think that they're actually investigating, that they're interviewing with the victims. I get that sense. I've got people, for one, I got people asking me, reporters asking me, and I don't think that they're actually, and that's going to be bad. So I sent memos, I sent emails, I talked, I texted. And it just wasn't with Prevo, it was with other executives. And the pushback wasn't so much, well, we don't believe him. The pushback was in March, I'm in a meeting with some executives, and one of them says, the thing about that Baker Tilly, we just need to get that thing done. It's gone on long enough. This is in March, and it's gone on long enough. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And I said, but they haven't actually, from what I'm hearing, they haven't actually interviewed any of the sexual assault cases yet. Well, it's just gone on long enough. Well, the peer pressure internally then is, what's wrong with Lamb that doesn't realize, oh yes, it's gone on long enough, spent enough money, done enough things. I didn't think it had. And so I conveyed that even to the acting President Prevo on one meeting, in passing conversation I had. Sir, I've been interviewing with Baker Tilly, upwards at that point about 15 hours, I think 10, 15 hours. And they're asking a lot of questions that go beyond Jerry Prevo Jr. and, asking things even about your tenure. And I'm honest with them. And I'm kind of concerned, chuckle. I'm kind of concerned about my job because they're asking me questions about you and even your oversight of Junior or lack thereof. And I've told them what I thought. And so that's how candid I have been with these people.
What did you think?
He said, well, you just continue being honest. Nothing's going to happen. You just be honest. You tell them what you think. Okay, I will, and because the document said, don't worry about anybody's reputation, which I think is the basis of actually getting to truth. Don't worry about the reputation of the school, past, present leadership, board members, executive leadership. I took them at their word. I was told by former employees not to take them at their word. They said, this is a witch hunt. You'll be terminated, or you'll accidentally get other people terminated. They said, look, truth is important, but you might want to self-preserve. Well, I didn't want to self-preserve. So starting in January and February, I gave them the interview sessions. And then ancillary to that, I began hearing from journalists things as Gangster Capitalism, Julia Royce, and others were hitting us with questions that were obviously coming from victims. And I thought, at first I thought, Baker Tilly's, they're going to answer these questions in the report. And then there was one, Politico wrote an article, I think at the beginning of April, and they actually said, we're hearing reports that, not all the victims have been, the victims haven't been interviewed, or something to that effect.
Right.
And I was given an email from the general counsel with the Baker Tilly lawyer on it that said, hey, look, you need to respond to Politico on these three things. And one of them was about the Title IX. They said, here's what you need to tell them. And it was, Baker Tilly is investigating all matters and all people that enter the port. But, it was saying, no, we have, and we are. And I, on that email immediately, I remember it was on a Saturday afternoon. I was in the parking lot of Target, with my thumbs trying to get the email out. But I said, this isn't true. First of all, I'm not a spokesperson for Baker Tilly. I'm not going to run PR for them. But second of all, it's not true, because I'm getting reports that they have not been contacted. If that's wrong, tell me. And
who's asking this? Who specifically? Who is saying that?
This is an email trail with me and the general counsel of Liberty University and
David Corey.
Yes, and the lead interviewer for the local boots on the ground lawyer who was hired by Baker Tilly to interview, and who had interviewed me. Yeah. And so I'm in an interesting position. Not only am I getting interviewed, but I'm also on these emails with external counsel. Right.
And so David Corey is saying to you, say that the Baker Tilly investigation is interviewing these women. I know Jane Doe 2 on the lawsuit that was brought by the Jane Does. Now it's up to 22 women accusing the school of mishandling their Title IX cases. I know that she contacted Baker Tilly through the public portal. She told me she has never been contacted by Baker Tilly, has not had a single interview. And let's look at it. Baker Tilly is not a sexual, allegations, a Title IX investigation. It's a forensic, it's a accounting forensic kind of firm. It has nothing to do with this. It has no expertise in this area.
Well, so that was just one anecdote. And that was just one that I happen to have an email. I don't have it with me, but yeah, it was point number 3. You need to hit back at Politico. They need to correct that, because all people that have entered the portal have been or will be, interviewed. But you and I know, as of today, they haven't.
Did this come up in that October 4th meeting?
Well, no, the October 4th meeting was bang, bang, let's start screaming at Scott, shouting at Scott, telling him to shut up, and calling him a liar. He told me to shut up 5 times, called me a liar several times, which I had at the moment.
When you say called you a liar, you talking Jerry Prevo called you a liar?
Yes, which I had on my phone evidence of him, not only that I wasn't lying, but that he was lying. I couldn't pull it up because we had been told as we entered the room, everybody needs to turn their phones off. I've been there 3 years and 9 months. I've never once been told to have the phones turned off. As we sit down, everybody needs to turn their phones off. All right. Okay. I see. It's an ambush coming.
That October 4th meeting dealt with the 501c3 status, the Falkirk Center, getting people elected, the investigation that it wasn't.
Well, I brought the investigation to the table because as soon as he, when I said, well, sir, look, you're telling us that we're in trouble for doing some memes. You told me to help get people elected. I never did that. I said, you told me to help make sure that Glenn Youngkin, I never said that, and so that's when he started calling me a liar. And I can be called a lot of things and have patience for it, but a liar, I'm not going to put up with that. So I said, sir, not only am I not lying, but I have evidence. Well, I couldn't pull it up on my phone right then and there. My phone was shut down and stuff like that. And he said, do you hear this? He is calling the president of this university a liar. And I'm thinking, well, if the shoe fits, wear it. I mean, literally, I have the evidence. What do you have? As recently as July, he told me that my department was running on all cylinders. Great job on a recording. Great job, stellar performance. Keep it up. All this kind of stuff. He had just authorized Ryan Helfenbein and I to launch at least for a 1-year contract, a live national daily 28-minute radio program, like on terrestrial radio. Okay. And said, that's a fantastic job. I can't wait to hear it. Tell them that it was my idea to get it started. Well, okay. Okay.
So was there anything specifically about the Title IX, though? I guess that's what I'm wondering.
So that's when I held up, when he threatened the job, that's when I held up the whistleblower retaliation form that I had been given in January. I've been walking around with it in my pocket, basically, for the last few months. And I said, sir, you really need to back down right now, because even what you're saying about, turning your resignation, and I'm the president, I could fire you. Just using that language here with me as I'm bringing up concerns about the institution, concerns I brought up to Baker Tilly, you're doing something wrong just by threatening my job. And he's like, I've never signed that. I'm like, sir, you signed it. It's right here. He looked at it. Well, okay. But I said, you need to just de-escalate. I said, we need to get the general counsel in here. The general counsel came in and I said, general counsel, here's the deal. He's threatened my job. He's threatened to fire me. And I said, right now, I believe I have a case of whistleblower protection, and we're talking about things. I said, there's something going on here at the university that is either incompetence or nefarious. It's either incompetently telling the world that we're doing something and we're not, or it's actually really purposely doing that. Each man and woman at executive leadership will stand before God as to whether they were incompetently or purposely trying to cover it up, and I'm not alleging that any one particular person was this way or that way. I'm just saying that the collective system as a whole, some, just think, well, eventually the truth will come out, and some actually perhaps are working with external counsel and the insurance company to have a plan for basically mitigating the risk, to lessening the risk of the payout. Because I think some of those people actually know, I think some things happened. So I think they actually know things happened. But look, we got $2.3 billion in the bank. We know how to take care of these things.
So there's from your perspective, the women haven't been interviewed. The allegations have not been looked into. The only effort that Liberty, from what I'm getting from you, the only effort that Liberty has made is to mitigate the damage to them.
That literally is what was told to me by the external counsel on the lawsuit. Heading into Friday morning, October 1st, when there was a speech that Prevo, Acting President Prevo, did give from the stage of Convo in response to the Teal ribbon campaign. And essentially, I worked for 7 hours through the night, from 10 o'clock at night all the way to 5:30 in the morning, to craft what turned into an 8-page memo that line by line by line took apart the planned script that our general counsel, in consultation with the external counsel, had given him. It was lacked empathy. It was patronizing. It would have caused hurt. One phrase after another would have gone viral. The victims would have taken it apart line by line, and it would have made those who are already righteously angry just catastrophically angry. Okay. And it would have taken those who were indifferent to this situation and actually made them activists, I believe. And I said, look, we've waited this long to say something. I wish we hadn't. I'm 100% in favor of you saying something, but this speech, these planned remarks, not only lack the right tone and empathy, and I'm not talking about malarkey words that pretend like you have empathy. I'm saying real words. I'm not an expert in this, and I had said, look, we need to bring in like a Rachel Denhollander, people who deal with this all the time. And they can instruct where our, collectively as an institution, we're not even using the right vocabulary, and through not trying or just we haven't taken the time yet. I don't know what it is, but we need to bring in help at people that can help us to actually get our mind around it institutionally. I'm not saying nobody had their mind around it, but anyway, back to the point of that speech. Worked all the way through the night, took it apart, and then one particular set of lines said, once I heard about this lawsuit, I became very alarmed. Well, that was like, what do you mean? Once you became aware of this lawsuit? That happened in July. I mean, all the way back in August, there was political articles about our former first lady and things like that. There were Title IX implications on the first day of your office.
Mm-hmm.
But the script, now, admittedly, he didn't use the script, but it was given to him and it was planned for him to say things extemporaneously. But he said, in the script, it said, once I found out about these things, I became very concerned, and I hired a law firm to look into these things and get to the bottom of these things and give some recommendations. Now, you and I know that if we're sitting with 10,000 18 and 20-year-olds who are actively passing out teal ribbons, what that sounds like is Rachel Denhollander and Boz Tajikivan are coming to the rescue, or they've been hired. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
What I know that it is, because on that email is the external counsel. What I know is, well, first of all, I know it's not Baker Tilly. So what other law firm? I'm looking around. I mean, what other law firm is he talking about? Is he talking about the law firm on this email? The law firm on this email was hired in conjunction with our insurance company, Julie. They're not looking into this. So I say that in the memo, and I just let it all hang out like this. This is a lie. Okay. We can't say this. And I wish it was true, but we can't say it. And so I send the memo. I get a little bit of one response from the Liberty side. He said, hey, I'm going to talk to Prevo about that before convo. And he wound up just saying 60 seconds and something. It almost sounded like he had forgotten to say anything, but he says 60 seconds, and at least it wasn't a grenade. I mean, it was a grenade to the hearts of those who were in pain, but at least it wasn't as bad as the original script.
Well, it wasn't lying outright. And who crafted that?
That'd be our general counsel and his office.
So David Corey crafted.
Well, I mean, I don't know who put the words together, but our general counsel put them out to the group email and said, let's work on this. But here's a draft. It's been looked over by external counsel. I don't think they looked over it enough, not with my eyes. The external counsel, I think they were willing to let him say those things or maybe they were just busy on a Thursday afternoon.
But they know that's not true.
Well, here's what I'm saying. The following morning, before about half an hour before convo, then the external counsel. Now she's one of the top, number one ranked, as it says on our website, litigators for higher ed Title IX lawsuits. Okay, so they got good counsel. Okay,
this is the one defending them against the Jane Doe lawsuit.
Yes. And she goes, "Hey, look, Scott has provided excellent analysis. He is correct." And just to clarify, and I've got my colleague here, we together need to clarify to you guys at a point that what Scott said, we're not here to look into the situation and see what happened to whom or by whom. That is not why we're here. That's an investigation, action. We are here to litigate and mitigate the risk to the university. Of course you are. What idiot didn't know that, right? I mean, and I don't hold them against it. That's their job as a lawyer. They were hired. That I personally wouldn't want to do that, but that's their job. But to even think that you were going to stand up in response to teal ribbons and speak to the crowd and the live stream and convey something which clearly was saying, I'm looking to get to the bottom of it and find out what happened and mete out punishment to those who might have done something, that is not what the law firm that he hired, was there to do. I brought that out to them on the Thursday night to Friday morning. I'd already had a whole entire day of work, but all the way to 5:30 in the morning, I went, hit the send button, and then for Monday morning, on 1 hour's notice, I was called in the president's office. Called at 9 o'clock. The president wants to see you at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm there. We're talking about memes. Then I'm called a liar. And it escalates from there. And Tuesday, I was offered severance, and your kids can still come here tuition free. Got to think about the kids. And I said, there's no way I'm signing a non-disclosure, guys. I mean, take the 30 pieces of silver and go stick them where the sun doesn't shine, because I am not signing a non-disclosure and spend the rest of my life waking up remembering what I didn't bear witness about. I'll go bankrupt before I do that. And I might go bankrupt with my legal fees. Anybody got some grass I can cut this summer? I mean, seriously, but Wednesday, I was terminated. That was that. Bang, bang, bang. And they hired an external PR firm.
Are we going to say who this is? Because Save 71
I don't.
LU is reporting that the firm they've hired is Kairos, which is Johnny Moore. Johnny Moore used to be chaplain there at Liberty, then went on to found his own PR companies, also was the head with Paula White of the Evangelical Advisory Council. But I know Johnny Moore because he's the one caught on a hot mic with James McDonald, and they're actually joking. This is back when James McDonald sued me because simply I hadn't published anything at the point he sued me. I was simply looking into and investigating allegations of misconduct by him. He hired Johnny to come in, and we had this hot mic recording of them. And James McDonald is joking about crude headlines about me having an affair, supposedly with some CT editor. But then the worst of it is they're joking about putting child porn on the computer of Harold Smith, who at the time was the CEO of Christianity Today. And Johnny Moore laughs along with James joking about this. And then at the end says, when James says he's calling off his plan, Johnny says jokingly, well, if you need somebody else to help you out with that, I know a few other people. I mean, it's shocking to me that this happened. It's shocking to me that Johnny Moore continues to hold any position in evangelicalism after this. But my understanding, and I'm just going to ask you point blank, is it true that Johnny Moore has been hired?
I can't be the source on that, Julie. I can't be the source on that. I mean, I can either confirm or the reason being that there's just people that work there that I don't ever want to say anything that ends up getting them fired. I mean, I was fired. That's my business, but other people are in different situations. So I will say this: I've had a national journalist talk to me about something that she heard, because she was going to put me on her show, and she did. Shannon Bream, and she had heard something from the Liberty University's PR team, external PR team. And, I can't confirm it there. You'll have to confirm it somewhere else. But David Corey puts out certain types of press statements, and they're very lawyerly. The ones that have been put out this week with me, he's looking for his 15 minutes of fame. Honestly, if you know me, I love to write books for a living. The worst part about writing a book, which is why I get co-authors usually that love to be on TV and radio, the worst part about writing a book is you become a public figure every time the book is released, especially the books I like to write, about public figures. And so 3 years, 9 months of being at Liberty, we've had lots of people come through here that are famous, and I'm standing there talking to them, and all of a sudden I see the photographer getting ready to snap a candid picture. I'm like, excuse me, I get out of this screen. It's just not my thing. I'd rather be a private person. The radio thing was going to be the biggest stretch of my life, to go on national radio, and I had to pray about that one for like a year as to whether I actually wanted to do that. But 15 minutes of fame, that's what I'm after, I suppose, is what they said yesterday.
Who does that sound like, Johnny Moore, to you?
It does not sound like David Corey, and the person, I don't know who's responsible. I can't confirm who's responsible for that, but that doesn't sound like David Corey, to sort of, dig into the ribs or something like that. That's okay. I mean, there's two types of PR people in the world, people who just say, it may take a lot longer to get the job done today by just telling the truth. It's a lot more anguishing, because sometimes journalists, they don't care about the truth. They're just looking for something, not you, of course, but, everybody's cynical. They expect there's going to be spin and more spin. I just lead with the truth. Now, in an institution, you're not even always unbound to speak. And so at some point, the silence becomes a complicity in falsehood. And so last year, before, don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but last year, about 3 months before Jerry's resignation, I was thinking seriously about having to resign, with the KKK mask and and one just crazy, the fights with the New York Times. And there wasn't any, the blur between work and home became non-existent. So it's 7 days a week. Because a lot of things that Jerry did was on the weekend when he had extra time and other stimulants to provoke him to do crazy things. So anyway, I thought about it. I had 3 kids at college at the time, and I thought maybe I'm here to shape him, guide him. And I did a lot of that with Junior, but it became less and less effective. And to the extent that it was less and less effective, that he wasn't really listening to the counsel to behave, then I thought I'm just going to probably resign. And so I'm having those conversations. COVID hits, lots of stress on everybody. The kids are all at home 24/7, and other things happened. And then one day I get a call, and he's been put on leave. 3 weeks later, he resigns. And I honestly thought that the cavalry had arrived. The instabilities of my former boss, who I got along with on a personal level. This isn't anything personal, but I thought the cavalry was arriving. Got a preacher for 47 years.
Prevo was the chairman of the board when everything happened.
I know.
Can we possibly believe that he?
But see, you can cut that
one
both ways. You can think, well, then he knows a lot of stuff, and if he's going to come in, and he'll be especially poised to help reform things because he knows so much. Or it's the other way around. He knows things, and he was complicit in it. And I didn't know which way it was.
Let me ask you about the trustees, because they're meeting this week, right?
They're meeting this next week. I call on them to actually, I would like just one thing. I mean, one thing came out of that meeting, that they actually hire Boz Jacobin and Rachel Denhollander to look into the Title IX. That would just be a first fruit. And maybe a second first fruit would be to release a press statement that says, we will never prosecute somebody for breaking an NDA. You don't have to go back and look at all the NDAs and one by one contact them. Just say, we promise as an institution, we won't prosecute anybody for breaking an NDA. Just those two things alone. Look, how can the institution claim that they're being transparent about things when they won't even tell Julie Royce who their press guy is? I mean, you've been asking for 2 weeks. Who's the press guy? Who's this press guy that keeps getting quoted? The spokesperson. If you can't even be transparent about who your spokesperson is, you got a problem. Why? Why can't you tell the world who your spokesperson is?
And do you find that the trustees generally know what's going on, or are independent enough to do anything?
I don't have to answer in my own words. I'll answer in the words of Jerry Prevo Jr. And he said this on enough occasions that I can nearly quote it. Well, they're all good people, and most of them are friends of my dad. I've known them since they've known me since I was a young kid. I think the world of them, but most of them are asleep. Most of them are out to lunch. Two different metaphors: out to sleep, lunch, whatever. But most of them are just out to sleep later, and they've been through so much. They saw how we almost went bankrupt all those years. They just thankful that we're not going bankrupt anymore. After all those years of every time they get there, it's a gut wrenching. Are we going to go bankrupt between now and the next board of trustees meeting? That was the largest portion of the group. He said, but that doesn't matter. It's the executive committee, but not really the executive committee as a whole, just a few of them. And in particular, my boss is Jerry Prevo. And as long as I keep him happy, then I keep the executive committee happy. And that's all that really matters. And then he said, and I'm just lucky that my boss lives in Anchorage, Alaska. You know what I'm saying? And now most of us would probably like to have a boss that lived in Anchorage, Alaska. This summer, I actually would have rather had a boss that didn't live in Anchorage, Alaska during the summer. It would have been nice to have one here in Lynchburg. But all things being equal, most of us, human nature being what it is, we'd rather have somebody not looking over our shoulder. And there's some crazy idea that SACS doesn't want the board of trustees, the accrediting agency doesn't want the board of trustees to be really hyper vigilant. There's also an independent Baptist culture. I understand it well, that makes fun of Southern Baptists who have pastors who are dominated by their deacons. That's the thought. But independent Baptists, we don't get dominated by our deacons. Thus saith the Lord, the man, don't touch the Lord's anointed. There's a culture there. And a lot of these guys are pastors, and they've been pastors. And in their own churches, they didn't like to be bossed around by a board. And Jerry didn't like to be bossed around by a deacon board, Jerry Prevo Sr. And they all said that it's a joke, deacons. That's what, Southern Baptists, that's why they had the little small churches. The deacons rule the pastor. And that culture goes into I believe the culture goes into the board of trustees. You show up for a lot of years. We're not really here to boss you around. We're just here because the government says you have to have a board of trustees. I'm alleging that's not a crime, okay, to have a culture of indifference.
Well, they do have fiduciary responsibilities.
They do have fiduciary responsibilities, and as long as everything's going fine, it's just that when there's a mission drift, and the CEO needs to be reprimanded, well, then it becomes a matter of who actually is the real functioning board, and it's the executive committee. Well, then you just got to hope.
Who's the executive committee?
It's on the website. I mean, it starts with Harvey Gainey and Tim Lee and goes down,
But those are the ones actually running the university, you said.
But as Jerry Jr. said, but not all of the executive committee, just some of them, and not really even them.
And Prevo was on that executive committee.
Prevo was the chairman of the executive committee.
Right.
So, And that's what I told Baker Tilly, when he said, well, in addition to Junior, who else was to blame? I said, you mean like, floating around? I mean, like floating around, most of us just kind of did what Junior told us to do. But if you're talking about like who was overseeing Junior, it was the board of trustees, specifically the executive committee, specifically Jerry Prevo.
So if Baker Tilly finds that Liberty University had acted inappropriately, that under Jerry there was financial misconduct, which there are ample allegations that there was, and a lot of evidence it appears that it was, that goes back. There's no way that Jerry Prevo himself is not responsible for that because he was the chairman of the board. This is where I'm a little bit just puzzled that he hasn't been called more to account for this.
Well, as my lawsuit alleges, which I need to keep on referring back to the lawsuit, that's where the muscle is going to come in. The lawsuit alleges that Liberty University has been behaving very badly at the top levels of leadership. So I'm not trying to implicate one particular person. I'm just saying fiduciary responsibility rests on the board of trustees. There's a great book out there, Mission Drift. I almost treat it like the Bible. It's got all this great anecdotal information from various institutions, even one I'm familiar with, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and how that board had been wrong and Al Mohler cleaned it up and things like that. But it says in every year and every decade, the board either is drifting or they're staying fast. And most people think, well, it's the liberal faculty that determine, we don't give the faculty tenure because that's where the liberalism creeps in. I think that's a fruit of mission drift, not the root. I think the root, as the book says, mission drift, it's the board, because the board's the one that governs the executive leadership, supposed to, and says in a Christian institution, says, we need you to hold fast in your soul, not just legalistically speaking, in your soul, actually be attached to Christ, want to do what Christ wants you to do in your soul, executive leadership, which means the board has to do that. Now, what takes you away from those things, many things can take you away from that, but the scripture is pretty clear that the love of money is a root of all evil. And let's just be honest, we've got a lot of money at Liberty University, which is to say that we're really, really good at what we do, which is delivering a product that people pay for. In this case, $1 billion a year of federal student loans helps them pay for that. So we're really good at delivering that and earning the money. $300 million in profits last year. Now, I've been at other institutions that have been in existence for 100, 150 years. How much endowment do you have? We're up to $45 million. Wow, that's pretty good. In this other institution, we got 11 million, which really means they're a year or two away from going bankrupt. If they have, COVID shut down or something like that. 45 million, that's pretty good. 300 million was added to the endowment last year, right? So my alma mater at Southern Seminary, I think they got like 90 million. They've been in existence since before the Civil War, like 90 million in the bank for endowment that they've piled up, nickels and dimes here and there. And we put 300 million last year alone, 3 times that. What gets us to that point? Well, it is a focus. I would allege, as I allege in my lawsuit, it's a focus on that. It's a focus on the bottom line. And they're really good at it. There's nothing sinful about focusing on the bottom line as long as you don't actually lose the actual thing that you were trying to do. And I would allege, and I would talk about it in a court, that in various ways, in various shapes and forms, there is a focus on growing the endowment up to like $6 billion of what the goal was. And that's misplaced. I don't even think Doc Falwell, as much as he was worried about, going out of business, not having enough money, I think he'd say, whoa, that we got enough. Now let's get back to the original stuff here. I'm not saying he walked on water with everything he did and believed, but I don't think he would have said, we got 2.3 billion, we need to get to 6, and then just pummel things into the ground in a way that drifts from the mission. That's what burdens me the most, is there's so much resources here that are either going to, if the mission drifts and continues, be used for not the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Christ, or they can be, if we can pivot right now. But it starts with institutional, and I'm not part of the institution, so I can't make any, big plans here. Like, well, this is what we should do. I'm not in leadership anymore, but we know what when you look at the 7 churches of Revelation, when they're on the wrong side of Jesus, it's always the same words: repent, restore, renew, revive, reconcile, restitution. I mean, it's all those words: bring back to life, by doing action verbs that start with the letters R and E, get turned around. And this institution can do that. And that's why I say I'm the best friend Liberty University has, because I'm praying to that end. It starts with a very small group of people, though, not the 300,000 alumni. Now they need to put the pressure on that small group. The smaller group is not going to listen to even a lawsuit if they're told that I'm a disgruntled employee. Liberal leftist media, is tapping into me and my disgruntledness or something like that. Fired for cause, all this stuff. They're not going to listen to it, but I pray that they will. I pray they will.
Last question, and we've already gone over time, and you've been very, very generous with me, but I just have one question that something that you've said to me in the past is that Liberty, there are about 50 employees that just need to go now. And I know one of them, for example, I'm guessing, would be Laura Wallace, who was, she's currently the head of human relations there at Liberty University. She's the cousin of Jerry Falwell Jr. And you even, I don't know if you can recount this story of a time that you were in her office and, in Jerry's office, and she's on speed dial with him. It's a one-button call.
Other way around.
Okay, so it was Laura.
She reached around without looking at the phone, picked up the phone with one hand and pushed a button on a panel of about 20 buttons for the speed dial for Jerry to get his authorization or not on something that I was talking to her about. And I'm thinking, wow, so to connect that to what I said about 50 people, and you go, look, I need to stick with the claims in the lawsuit. That's, there's systemic problems. I don't need to focus on one in particular person. I'll let the board, start fixing things, and hopefully that'll start right at the very, very top. And that would start in executive leadership. But for years, the LUPD reported directly to Laura Wallace, and during so many of these cases, it reported directly to Laura Wallace. Title IX violation cases, sex assault. Sometimes I don't like that euphemism. Title IX violations. No, it's sex assault. Okay, let's just call it
rape
what it is.
In many cases.
Sex harassment, sex assault, rape. So they report her. I'm not making an allegation against her on any of that. I'm just saying, can we get to the bottom of what happened? Is it, the documents are there. I don't, can we get to the bottom of what actually happened in just the cases that have emerged, let alone other ones that people had something happen, but they're never going to come forth about it. And I understand that their pain is too much, and they've got, they just don't have clearance in their heart to do so. But yeah, when you're head of the HR and those groups report to you, LUPD, security, that kind of thing, and you report directly to Jerry Falwell Jr. Now, he called me last week.
I heard that in one of your other interviews. Yeah. And
he said that, he was always kept in the dark about Title IX, that it just went right to David Corey and David Corey to the board.
Jerry Falwell Jr. is on the emails that I published of Jane Doe 2. He's on numerous emails. He was the point person. I don't know how he can say that.
I said, that's not true. I said, that's not true, but.
And Jonathan Falwell, who's currently the chaplain there, he was copied, he was sent directly, not just copied on some of them. And I've published those as well. He says he doesn't remember ever getting them, but neither one of them can say they weren't. And Jerry Falwell responded to numerous ones.
Well, there's some explaining to do,
Yes, there is.
And I pray that, can you imagine if we wake up a week from Saturday when the board is heading back out of town, or Friday night when they're heading back out of town, and a press release comes out from Liberty University that says, we have hired in a very independent way, but for her time is worth something. She's got a family. We've hired Rachel Denhollander, and we've hired Boz, who was a law professor here until just a couple of years ago. I mean, Boz, just get back up to Lynchburg. We need your help. Forming a task committee that basically has one function: to hire a third party and then oversee them for us, oversee that third party investigation for us, and then report. Say this on day one. Report back all findings in a public document, a document that we made public. Do it. Now, you say,
that's what Bob Jones University did. Surprisingly,
come on.
It did with
it'd be different if they had 10 million in the bank and they were on the verge of bankruptcy. But I'm not one who just wants to burn money. But this isn't burning money. This is making restitution. And it's not hush money. It's not paying them up to put them under NDA. It's bringing it to the light And then when if you find something, then just institutionally say we've done things wrong. And to the extent that I've ever been a part or perceived to be a part of a conspiracy of silence, I confess that before God. I know in my heart where I was at various stages of not knowing things and then knowing things. And then as soon as you know some things, timers are ticking. If you ever watch these movies where a guy is undercover as a drug agent, he goes home at night and he's himself and he's talking to his wife, he's talking to his best friend over a beer, and he says, I don't know how much longer I can do this. I mean, you bump into people that and they think you're some evil monster now, There's a real reality of that. And there's some people on the inside right now that feel that same way. They're like, look, the timer's ticking. How much longer can I go? Hoping, of course, I think they were hoping like me that the investigation was actually going to blow some things open and we could get beyond these things. That's still possible. I talked to somebody texted me last night who's on the board. I'm trying not to have any contact with the institution, right? I'm in a legal thing, but they said, I'm praying for you. I'm like, well, pray that real repentance and reconciliation can happen. I mean, this is a Christian institution. I'm a Christian. It's not about my lawsuit. Let's not fixate on my one little man's lawsuit. That's not what this is really about. Think about the big picture. Keep your eye on the ball when you go into that board meeting next week. I said, because things can actually change if the institution wants them to. Think about how wonderful that would be in the year of Jubilee to actually say, well, that was where we pivoted away from things that had been built and created, systems that have been built and created. I pray that happens. Julie, I've taken enough of your time. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience today.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate you talking to me. And again, I've taken more time than we had anticipated at the beginning, but I do appreciate it. And I just pray that truth and justice will be served in the end.
I ask your audience to pray for Liberty University. Pray for Liberty University, please. It needs it.
And thanks so much for listening to The Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys. If you'd like to find me online, just go to Julie Roys, spelled ROYS.com. That's julieroys.com. Also, a quick reminder to subscribe to The Roys Report on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or now on Spotify. That way you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, we'd really appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and then sharing this podcast on social media. Again, thanks so much for joining me. Hope you have a great day, and God bless.